Behind the royal titles and red carpets lies a story few dared to tell. Sarah Ferguson, once the flame-haired Duchess who dazzled the world, now stands in the wreckage of a financial disaster she never saw coming. From secret shopping sprees to the collapse of a bizarre Bitcoin venture, her world of privilege is rapidly crumbling, and what's left might expose more than just her bank balance. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Her tale was never just about glamour, it was about survival, masked in tiaras, photo ops, and endless second chances. While the cameras captured her beaming alongside royalty, insiders tell a different story. One of spiraling debts, reckless ventures, and quiet palace interventions. The woman once adored for her boldness and charm has now become the subject of hushed concern among royal circles. The mystery lies not only in how she reached this point, but why the palace has remained so uncharacteristically silent. Could it be because her downfall threatens to drag others into the spotlight? The failed Bitcoin venture in Nevada might have looked like just another business misstep, but it was the final tremor in a financial earthquake, years in the making. Rumors of overdue bills, frantic property sales, and silent withdrawals from luxury circles only add to the intrigue. This isn't just about overspending. It's about a woman who mistook royalty for immunity, who built a lifestyle on the illusion of bottomless wealth, and now faces the cold, harsh reality of its limits. Palace aides whisper that she's on the brink, her access narrowed, her influence fading. And in those whispers lie the darkest fears, that Fergie's unraveling isn't just personal, it's political. If she falls hard enough, what else might come crashing down with her? Because when someone with royal secrets faces financial ruin, the line between discretion and desperation begins to blur. And those willing to talk may no longer care who gets hurt. But to understand how it all fell apart, we must first revisit the fantasy Fergie believed would save her one shopping spree at a time. Before cryptocurrency, before lawsuits, there were the suitcases. Dozens of them. From diamond-studded teddy bears to 50,000 pounds flower budgets, Sarah Ferguson's appetite for extravagance was unmatched, even by royal standards. And yet, few knew just how deep the rabbit hole went until the bills came crashing down. Her obsession with luxury wasn't just a phase, it was a pattern, a relentless need to fill every corner of her life with symbols of grandeur. The headlines focused on the absurd. A 515-pound teddy bear tucked among over 50 designer-stuffed bags on a transatlantic flight. But that was only the beginning. The deeper truth, whispered behind palace walls, was that Sarah lived each day like a coronation. Former staff recall that dinners at the York residence were less meals and more spectacles, entire roasts, multiple entree, as if each night required a feast worthy of kings. Whole sides of beef, full legs of lamb, roasted chickens, all prepared whether there were guests or not. She packed not just dresses, but trunks dedicated entirely to hangers. Her travel luggage required special handling and staggering excess baggage fees, sometimes as much as 4,000 pounds, just to satisfy her whims. The numbers were staggering. 860,000 pounds a year gone in a blur of indulgence. 150,000 pounds vanished on gifts, lavish tokens meant to dazzle friends and silence critics. Another 50,000 pounds disappeared into flower arrangements that wilted faster than her reputation. Entertainers, chefs, stylists, personal trainers, they cycled through her world with little explanation, some waiting hours, unpaid, while she decided whether to use their services. And through it all, she smiled, spoke of charity, and presented herself as a woman reinvented. But those close to her saw something different. A woman so consumed with appearances that she mistook extravagance for self-worth. That each spree, each feast, each flamboyant purchase wasn't about joy, but about desperately clinging to a version of herself that no longer existed. The palace staff, usually silent and composed, couldn't ignore it forever. Their eyes weren't just wide, they were weary. Whispers of unpaid bills and frustrated vendors began to echo in corners once protected by silence. What started as royal exuberance now looked dangerously close to chaos. The woman the public saw as vibrant and unfiltered had become, in private, a cautionary tale of entitlement unchecked. But even as her debts mounted, and the walls started to close in, there remained one constant figure behind the curtain. One man who made her believe this life could continue without consequence. But if lavishness was her addiction, then Andrew was her enabler, and together they forged a dependency the palace couldn't contain. She thought she was marrying a prince with endless riches. Instead, she walked into a house of mirrors, where titles didn't come with a credit card, and dreams of royal luxury turned into IOUs. Her mistake wasn't just trusting Andrew, it was believing the crown would fund her fantasy. Sarah Ferguson had imagined royalty came with a blank check, that marrying into the House of Windsor would mean escaping the financial strain of her early life. But what she found behind palace walls was a harsh contradiction. A rigid system where personal indulgences were not subsidized, where even the Queen's children were expected to manage their own affairs. Sarah had never truly grasped that while royalty came with prestige, it did not guarantee prosperity. She and Andrew were constantly scraping together appearances of affluence while privately battling overdrafts. The gowns, the dinners, the globe-trotting, all illusions maintained through borrowed wealth and personal deals that quietly chipped away at their credibility. Behind closed doors, palace aides grew increasingly frustrated. Her spending didn't slow, it escalated. Her perception of entitlement clashed directly with the royal household's expectations. Expenses ballooned without explanation. Staff whispered of unapproved costs and mysterious invoices. But Sarah couldn't or wouldn't see the cracks. And neither could Andrew, who stood by her even as their finances crumbled beneath them. Their relationship, even after divorce, transformed into something murky and unspoken, a bond driven less by love and more by survival. Tina Brown once called it a destructive mutual reliance, and it was. When Andrew faced humiliation, Sarah defended him publicly. When Sarah faced debt, Andrew found a way to shield her, even if it meant bending palace protocol. Their dynamic became a tightrope act, balancing royal expectations, public image, and the sheer financial chaos bubbling beneath the surface. As royal advisors grew, more desperate to protect the family's reputation, one thing became clear. The safety net would not last forever. King Charles, determined to restore dignity and discipline to the monarchy, had no patience for old patterns of indulgence. And when that safety net was finally ripped away, Sarah didn't retreat or downsize, she did something far more dangerous. But when the palace finally cut the safety net, Sarah didn't downsize, she gambled everything on a digital mirage in the desert. They promised her millions, she promised them her name, and together they built a fantasy on sand. The Mojave Desert Bitcoin scheme was supposed to be her redemption. Instead, it exposed her worst judgment yet, and dragged her back into financial infamy. When Pegasus Group Holdings unveiled their grand vision, a multi-billion-pound solar-powered Bitcoin mining operation in the middle of Arizona, Sarah Ferguson saw more than just an investment. She saw a lifeline. To the outside world, it was innovation. To Sarah, it was resurrection. They called it the Hive, a tech oasis that would supposedly revolutionize sustainable crypto. But underneath the glossy brochures and visionary slogans was nothing but empty desert and empty promises. Still, Fergie stepped into the spotlight once more, lending her royal name to a dream she barely understood. In exchange, she reportedly received £200,000 upfront, with a promised bonus of £1.2 million if the project succeeded. And just like that, her name was back in the headlines, but for all the wrong reasons. Pegasus never built a single data center. What they did build was a paper empire of lawsuits, fraud allegations, and shattered investor trust. Whispers quickly turned into full-blown accusations. Executives accused of siphoning funds, investors claiming deceit, regulators circling. By 2023, the project had collapsed, its grand plans buried beneath legal rulings and public outrage. The Duchess's involvement became a stain, another reckless endorsement that made people question her judgment, her integrity, and her desperation. Behind closed doors, former allies shook their heads. She hadn't learned. Not from the shopping sprees, not from the scandals, not from the palace's quiet warnings. She'd simply found a shinier promise and walked straight into it, eyes wide shut. It wasn't just about greed. It was about a woman who couldn't stand being irrelevant. A woman so accustomed to the glow of cameras and clinking of glasses that she'd gamble her already tarnished reputation on a mirage. Her name wasn't just used, it was sold. And in return, she received yet another dose of public humiliation. Legal experts warned of reputational risk. Financial commentators mocked her naivete. The press pounced. And through it all, Sarah remained defiant, silent in her shame, yet still clinging to the hope that something, anything, could redeem her. But the cost of that hope was rising, because now even the walls she once called home were beginning to disappear. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, the Duchess quietly sold off her prized townhouse, and with it, the illusion of stability. From a townhouse in Belgravia to the gates of Royal Lodge, Sarah Ferguson's empire is vanishing one deed at a time. But behind each quiet sale, there's a louder scream, the sound of desperation behind closed doors. Her once coveted £4.25 million townhouse, nestled in one of London's most exclusive neighborhoods, was sold in silence, offloaded for a deflating £3.85 million. The loss wasn't just financial, it was symbolic. That home, once claimed to be an investment for her daughters, now stood as a monument to misjudged ambition. And the timing was no coincidence. As the lawsuits from her failed crypto venture loomed and brand partners quietly backed away, she was left with few options. The illusion of stability, of having bounced back once again, was crumbling under the weight of compounding debt and public fatigue. But it was the loss of Royal Lodge that delivered the deepest cut. For decades, it had been her last royal stronghold, the place where she clung to the illusion that she still belonged to the institution that had long distanced itself from her. King Charles's reshaping of the monarchy underlined a new reality. There would be no more tolerance for loose ends. And Sarah, with her scandals, associations, and headlines, was no longer welcome. The eviction wasn't just logistical, it was emotional. To be removed from Royal Lodge was to be stripped of her last visible tie to the crown. No press release, no official statement, just a silent, brutal reset of royal boundaries. Her attempts to adapt were frantic. Endorsement deals once flowing in for memoirs, wellness products, and public speaking dried up almost overnight. Former collaborators cited brand misalignment. What they meant was risk. No one wanted to be the next name tied to her downfall. Even her own ventures, once spun as empowering, inspirational efforts, failed to gain traction. Projects launched with flair disappeared into obscurity, each one taking a piece of her reputation with it. Caught in the crossfire were Eugenie and Beatrice, her daughters, who now bore the subtle burden of public sympathy and private discomfort. While the palace maintained an icy distance, they were left navigating the emotional debris of a mother under siege. Her spiraling misfortunes became an unavoidable part of their narrative, reminders that titles don't always protect you from disgrace. The emotional toll was mounting, the public embarrassment undeniable. No longer a charming oddity on the royal fringes, Sarah Ferguson had become a lesson in excess, arrogance, and consequence. And yet, as everything collapsed around her, her assets, her alliances, her reputation, one moment still stood above the rest. One moment that not only tainted her name, but shook the very foundations of royal decorum. But nothing shook the palace or the public like the night Fergie was caught on camera, selling access to royalty for cold, hard cash. The camera was hidden. Her words weren't. In 2010, Fergie wasn't just desperate, she was recorded. $500,000 in exchange for access to Prince Andrew. It was the scandal that stripped her last layer of royal dignity and left even Oprah speechless. The footage hit like a thunderclap. Sarah Ferguson, the once beloved Duchess of York, sat across from a man she believed to be a wealthy businessman. Calm, composed, and unnervingly casual, she laid bare a transaction that stunned the world. "That opens up everything you would ever wish for," she said, her voice laced with nervous charm. In that single sentence, She didn't just offer a meeting, she sold access to royalty as if it were a business deal over afternoon tea. But what she didn't know was that every second was being recorded by an undercover journalist from News of the World, and the price of that, the moment, would haunt her forever. When the footage aired, headlines erupted across the globe. The Duchess had crossed a line that even decades of indulgence and recklessness couldn't excuse. This was no longer about extravagance or poor judgment, it was about selling proximity to the monarchy, weaponizing her title for cash. Days later, Sarah appeared on The Oprah Winfrey Show, visibly shaken, eyes swollen with regret. She claimed she was intoxicated, desperate, that she had made a terrible mistake. She sobbed through apologies and begged the public for understanding. But it was too late. No amount of remorse could undo the damage. That one recording had etched a new image of Sarah Ferguson into the public's memory, not as the fiery Duchess with a rebellious heart, but as a fallen figure clawing for money in all the wrong places. The palace's response was swift and silent. Doors that had once been left slightly ajar were slammed shut. Royal insiders confirmed she had crossed an irreversible line. There would be no official statement, no confrontation, just the cold, calculated erasure of her remaining presence from royal affairs. She wasn't just an embarrassment, she was a liability. And within the family that once tolerated her excesses, she was now seen as a threat. The media, merciless and relentless, feasted on the story. Tabloids painted her as a grifter in a tiara. Talk shows turned her into late-night punchlines. Every detail, every frame of that sting was replayed, dissected, and mocked. And behind the curtain, Fergie spiraled. The guilt consumed her, but so did the defiance. She insisted it was a moment of weakness, not a reflection of who she truly was. But even those closest to her began to distance themselves, unsure of what lines she might cross next. What made it worse wasn't just the betrayal of the monarchy. It was the betrayal of the public trust. For years, she had portrayed herself as a survivor, a phoenix rising from ashes. But now, she looked more like the architect of her own ruin. The sting wasn't just a scandal. It was a mirror, forcing her and everyone watching to confront the truth. She had become addicted to access, influence, and the illusion that she could control how the world saw her. Yet even as the world turned away, Fergie kept chasing the light, and that pursuit would lead her straight into Epstein's shadow. When desperation meets opportunity, the consequences are deadly. Sarah Ferguson's acceptance of money from Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just a lapse in judgment, it became a ticking time bomb for the monarchy. And when it exploded, no one walked away clean. At first, it seemed like another whisper in a long list of accusations. But this time, the name attached to the financial lifeline was radioactive. Epstein, a man whose reputation had already scorched institutions, friendships, and legacies, was no ordinary financier. When it was revealed that he had wired £15,000 to help Sarah pay down her personal debts, the fallout wasn't just swift, it was seismic. Publicly, she admitted to taking the money. She insisted she had paid it back. But behind the palace gates, the panic was immediate, because rumors quickly spread that the payment was only the surface of a far darker truth. Some insiders claimed the real figure was closer to £2 million. Others hinted that it wasn't just about the money but about introductions, access, and a level of familiarity the palace never authorized. The timeline was damning. At the same time Sarah was accepting funds, she was still orbiting royal circles, still appearing at events, still attached, however, unofficially to the crown. The moment the press got wind of the connection, the damage was irreversible. Charities began cutting ties. Julia's House, a children's hospice she had long supported, quietly dropped her as patron. Their statement was brief, but pointed it would be inappropriate for her to remain involved given the circumstances. That single word, inappropriate, spoke louder than any tabloid headline. It wasn't just an embarrassment now, it was a contamination, and the palace knew it. Behind closed doors, there was no spin strategy, no plan for rehabilitation, only silence. The monarchy wanted distance urgently and permanently. Every archived photograph, every video clip, every shared appearance with Epstein became a liability. Public anger surged. The media dissected the timeline, the transactions, the trust. They painted a picture not just of guilt, but of recklessness. And for the public, it was no longer possible to tell where the bad decisions ended and the darker associations began. Was Sarah Ferguson a willing participant, or was she just a woman so broken by financial chaos that she reached for any hand that offered help, even one drenched in scandal? That was the question haunting observers. Because this wasn't her first bad choice, but it was, by far, the most dangerous. Danced on the edge of controversy for years, but now she was in free fall, and whether she jumped or was pushed didn't matter anymore. The result was the same: a former Duchess drowning in scandal with no royal hand reaching out to save her. And as the spotlight dimmed, a new version of Fergie emerged, one wrapped in wellness quotes, cancer treatments, and curated reinvention. They said she'd never recover. They were almost right. But Sarah Ferguson has a talent few can match: reinvention. From podcasts to cancer advocacy, from Instagram quotes to soft focus interviews, she's rewriting her story one filter at a time. But is it healing or hiding? After the scandals, after the money dried up and the royal lifelines were cut, Sarah didn't retreat quietly into exile. She re-emerged with a different narrative, one of resilience, self-discovery, and spiritual growth. She embraced the language of self-worth, flooding social media with affirmations, positioning herself as a beacon for women rising from adversity. She launched wellness initiatives, joined podcasts with a newfound voice of wisdom, and recast herself as a motivational figure, not a fallen duchess. But those watching closely couldn't help but see through the shimmer. The timing felt too perfect, the themes too curated, and her struggles too real to be swept away by hashtags and scripted interviews. Then came the cancer diagnosis, a moment of raw truth that brought public sympathy flooding back. For the first time in years, the headlines softened. Even her harshest critics paused. Her openness about the illness, the treatment, the fear, it felt honest. It was a rare glimpse of vulnerability in a life so often defined by performance. And yet, some couldn't help but question whether even this pain had become part of a larger narrative strategy. Her appearances became more carefully timed, interviews more guarded. The spotlight dimmed, but never disappeared. She used the illness to reconnect with an audience that had long turned away. And while the public offered compassion, it came laced with caution. Because behind the bravery, the old patterns remained untouched. Whispers swirled that wealthy benefactors still quietly financed her lifestyle. Private dinners in Monte Carlo, designer clothes spotted at unplanned appearances, exclusive retreats paid for in silence. She continued to live like royalty, even if no crown remained. And then came the rumors of a new memoir, a tell-all that could shake the foundations of royal secrecy. Insiders claimed the pages held explosive revelations, names, deals, and betrayals. If true, it wasn't just another book, it was leverage. And in Sarah's world, leverage had always been more valuable than loyalty. To some, she was finally telling her truth. To others, she was weaponizing it. The survivor or the manipulator. The comeback queen or the Duchess who refused to let go. Every move, every quote, every tear-streaked confession blurred the line between redemption and performance. And while she wore the mantle of changed woman, one truth echoed beneath it all: she had never truly changed, only adapted, transformed chaos into content, turned scandal into strategy. And yet, despite all the headlines, all the reinventions, one force continued to haunt her from the shadows. But behind every comeback hides the same ghost, the mounting debt that won't die, and the desperation that won't quit. Every fall needs a final chapter. And for Sarah Ferguson, it may have already begun. With no royal titles, no safe haven, and no more lifelines, her last reinvention may come at a price, even she can't afford. Because now, the Duchess isn't just broke, she's broken. Her life has become a carousel of collapsing ventures, each one built on shaky promises and hopes stretched too thin. From wellness brands to self-help books, reality shows to royalty-adjacent memoirs, each chapter was meant to be her salvation, and yet each ended in silence, lawsuits, or ridicule. What remains is a shattered reputation held together by denial and memory. She's no longer fighting for relevance, she's battling against erasure, against the ghost of the woman she once believed she could become. The addiction to fame and luxury was never about money alone. It was about identity. It was about needing to be seen, adored, validated. It was about being the Duchess, even after the crown had turned away. And now, that hunger has turned into a curse. The Epstein connection didn't disappear with a single press statement. It lingers, stubborn and dark, forever etched beside her name. In a monarchy obsessed with image and survival, her entanglement with a disgraced financier didn't just damage her, it threatened to stain the very institution she once served. And Charles, determined to preserve a streamlined, scandal-free reign, did what had long been inevitable. He cut her off for good. There are no more soft invites, no more shared country retreats, no gentle royal nods that she's still part of the family. The silence from the palace is permanent now. Her presence at royal events is more taboo than tolerated. And while the public still remembers her as the fiery redhead who once lit up Buckingham Palace with laughter, that nostalgia no longer protects her. It only deepens the tragedy. Because she isn't just facing financial collapse, she's confronting the legacy of her own pattern. Spend, collapse, reinvent, repeat. It's a cycle she's danced through for decades. But the rhythm is slowing. The stage is emptying. And the question she can no longer avoid is this: can she walk away from the performance? Can she live without the attention, the illusion, the fallback plan? Or will she try once more, one final scheme, one last headline to pull herself back into the light? If she does, it may be the most desperate gamble of her life. Because this time, the stakes aren't just her reputation. They're her identity, her dignity, her soul. In the end, Sarah Ferguson's greatest crisis wasn't financial. It was the cost of always trying to be someone the world would never let her become. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in the next one.